Hello and welcome to Art Time with Flori. I am so happy that you're here for class number 2. All right, so today we're going to be learning about the artist Henri Matisse, one of my favorites. We're also going to be learning about the origins of acrylics, and our art project today is Beach View. All right, kids, let's get started and talk about Henri Matisse. All right, kids, let's get started and learn about Henri Matisse. Henri Matisse was one of the most famous French painters in the 20th century and one of my personal favorites. Now, he didn't start out as a professional artist. He actually went to law school, passed the bar, and became a law clerk. Now, during that time, he became very ill. He had appendicitis. Now, during his recovery of his appendicitis, his mother decided to purchase some art supplies and give it to him so that way he could entertain himself and not get bored. So during that time of his recovery, while he was painting, he realized that, oh my goodness, I am in love with art, and decided right then that he was going to pursue and become a professional artist. Now, his father wasn't too happy that he was leaving his career in law to pursue and become a professional artist. However, his mother was very supportive. She was so supportive that she really influenced Henri Matisse's style of painting. Now, his mother influenced him to explore art, to paint his emotions with colors, and as a result, Henri Matisse he was actually one of the artists who developed the style of Fauvism. And what is Fauvism? Fauvism is when an artist uses bright, brilliant colors in their paintings. Now, some of them would actually squeeze their paint of tubes onto their canvas and just start painting aggressively to make it look like paint was bursting out of their canvases. So now that you know a little bit about Henri Matisse, let's jump in and learn the history of acrylics. All right, kids, let's get started and learn about acrylics. All right, so acrylics can be traced as far as the 1930s. They were created by a German chemist named Otto Rahm. Now, Otto Rahm created an acrylic resin that quickly transformed into paint. Now, it was designed to be used on houses and military vehicles. Now, acrylics didn't become introduced in the art community not until the 1950s, and it was very unpopular because of the quality of acrylics. It just would dry too fast, and it would just ruin the integrity of the artist's art pieces. So a lot of artists would go back to oil-based paints. Now, over time, advancements with acrylics has been made, and it has progressed, and now acrylic paintings are very qualitative. Now that you know a little bit of history on acrylics and a little bit of history on Henri Matisse, let's get started with our warm-up. All right, kids, before we begin, let's make sure we have everything we need to get started on our warm-up. So what we're going to need is your mixed media warm-up art book. You're also going to need a sketch pencil. If you don't have a sketch pencil, that's quite all right. You can use a regular pencil. Now, just to go over our sketch pencil, you'll be needing a 5B. Now, if you go into an art store, there's lots of different pencils. Now, sometimes they come in a package of 4 or 5. Now, just to let you know that 5B is one of the higher numbers. So the higher the number, the darker the sketch will come out. And the lower the number, the lighter it will be. All right, kids, so now that you have a little bit of information on sketching pencils, you're also going to need an eraser. Any kind of eraser is fine. All right, so we're going to have the list of materials listed on the screen. And go ahead, if you need to gather your things and come right back, I'll be right here waiting for you. let's jump into our warm-up. So go ahead, flip to the first page, grab your sketch pencil. So we're just gonna do 2 different sketches, one in the front page and one in the back. So our front page, we're gonna practice drawing a nice quick scene because that's what we're gonna be doing for our art project today. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to draw a light square, a quick little square, just to get you used to drawing a small scene. So this is it doesn't have to be perfect, it's just a warm-up, okay? So what we're gonna do is I'm going to add a line in kind of like middle, but not, so this would be the middle. We're gonna go a little under the midline. Here we go. All right, so I have my line, and I'm gonna start a little over to the top, and I'm gonna create a landscape. I'm gonna create mountains. So here we go. And it doesn't have to be like mine, it could be different. All right, so now that I have that there, now I'm gonna add the sun. The sun is setting. So gently do that. And now that I am done with that, I'm gonna go ahead and kind of make my mountains a little bit, you know. This is a nice warm-up technique for sketching to get used to learning how to sketch. We're not gonna be coloring it in, but it's a nice way to get going and to make it look like this is the ocean. And I'm gonna add a line right here to kind of break it in. And then I'm gonna do light lines so that shows that the sun is setting. So that's our first sketch. Now once you're done with your first sketch, go ahead, flip over. So for our art project, we're going to create like a door window panel. So I'm going to start my line right up here. Very quick. This doesn't have to be perfect. I don't want you guys to focus on perfection at all. And we're going to just so here at the bottom, we're kind of going to make our line overlap a little, and then we're going to add another line here, and another line there, and another line there. What does that look like to you guys? That's right, steps, and we don't have to make it perfect. That's fine. So now what I'm going to do is add a line here. And then shade it in. And then I'm going to add another line above the first line. All right, so once we're done with those lines, I'm good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add a diagonal line upwards. See how I did that? We're going to do the same to the other side. And then bring it down. Bring it down and connect it. Now we're going to add some little windows. We're going to do the same thing here. And this is just a quick little sketch. Perfect. Now we're going to add just another quick line. This is the window to our beach view. And this is okay. So I'm doing little circles to add, like, you know, green plants swirling down, because that's kind of what that's what we're going to be doing in our art project. So I want to give you a nice visual of what we're going to be adding. So in here you're going to add your little landscape scene of the ocean. So I'm going to draw a nice little line going up, make my line here, my middle line, and then create my landscape mountain. And remember, it doesn't have to be the same. I'm going to add the sun, I'm going to add some lines and a little bit of water, and I'm going to shade in my mountain. And voila! we have our beach scene. All right, kids, let's get started and jump in to our art project. All right, kids, so excited to get started. But before we start, let's make sure that we have everything we need to complete our art piece. So let's start with our brushes. You are going to need the angular brush, the number 3/4. You're also going to need the wash brush, 5/8. You're going to need the round paintbrush, number 10. And we have another round paintbrush, but it's smaller. It's the number 6 paintbrush. We also have the filbert brush. It's the number 4. And last but not least, our linear brush, number 1. Now, kids, if you don't have all of these paintbrushes, that's okay. Just use what you have. It's one way you get to learn about your brushes and explore what works and what doesn't. All right, kids. We're also going to need a sketch pencil. I'm using the 6B, but if you don't have it, that's okay. A regular pencil works just fine. You're also going to need an eraser. Okay, now let's move on to the next item. You're going to need your mixed media art paper, and if you notice, I have painter's tape around it. I like to create borders, but it also helps me to keep my art paper in place. You don't need this if you don't have it. It's okay. Now, you're also going to need a water bottle or a cup of water, a painter's palette, and these are the colors you're going to be needing: yellow, green, blue, red, gray, magenta, and aquamarine. You're going to need a towel to clean your paintbrushes or a paper towel. Either one works out fine. So we're going to list the materials on the screen. I'll be here waiting while you get prepared and go grab your stuff.
Life is beautiful, so hold your head up high.
All right, kids, now that we have everything we need, let's get started. So the first thing you're going to need is your sketch pencil. So go ahead, grab your sketch pencil, and let's get ready to sketch our art piece that we're going to paint over. Okay, so what I like to do, because we're going to create kind of like a big door, but with windows. So it's like a, open window. So we're going to create and draw or sketch, use either or terminology. We're going to sketch our rectangular door, okay? So what I like to do before I start any of my art pieces, I like to find the midpoint, especially when I'm going to sketch something. So I'm going to find the midpoint, the middle of my art piece, okay? And what I want to do is slide down without drawing anything. So I'm going to draw an invisible line towards the bottom of my art paper. And I'm not going to go all the way down. I got to decide where I want my door to end. So I think I want it here. So I'm going to lightly sketch a line just across. This is where it's going to end. And then I'm going to go back to the middle and then go up again, find my midpoint. See that tiny little dot? You might not be able to see it, but there's a tiny little dot that I put there. There's my midpoint. Now I'm going to slide up without drawing anything and find where I want it to start, the top of my door. So I want to make room for my greenery that I'm going to paint over. So I want it to start sketching here and draw my line. So for right now, you can draw a long line. Now if you don't feel comfortable doing that, and if it's too hard to hold it, you can hold it like this and draw a light line. So that's my starting point. That's my starting point to the top of my door, and this is the bottom, okay? So now I gotta figure out how wide do I want the opening of my door to be. So I don't want it too wide because I still have to make my door panels. So I want it to, I'm gonna add a line right here. That's the start. And then I wanna make it a little narrow. So just right about here. Actually, I changed my mind. I'm going to add a second line. That's okay. That's why we have our eraser. So this is how wide I want my door to be. So I'm going to go ahead, grab my eraser. Now, before we use our eraser, you have to make sure that it's clean. So you see this little dark part? I don't want to erase with that. So if your table is clean, my table is clean, so I'm going to clean this off and I'm going to erase. See how it cleans it off? That's what you need because you don't want dark stains on it. So I'm going to go ahead and just erase that first line that I made, lightly erase it, and just kind of even out. Perfect. And I'm just going to fill this in a little bit. All right, so the next thing we're going to do, you can put your eraser aside. I'm going to sketch lightly all the way down. Doesn't have to be perfect, okay? So let's go ahead and sketch. Pull down your pencil. And I like to do it very slowly and do light sketches because it helps with getting or creating a very straight line versus drawing a line. Sometimes when you draw straight down, it curves and it makes waves, and I want to get it as straight as I can. So I am sketching down very slowly. So take your time, okay? There's no rush. So I'm going to do the same thing to the opposite side. So I'm going to slowly sketch down. And remember, if it's not perfect, you can always erase it and find or sketch it more straight. So see how nice it's coming down? I'm just lightly sketching it down. And don't worry about the lines because we're going to paint over it. All right, so now I have the opening of the door. Now we're going to start drawing the panels. So now we're going to draw 2 lines on both sides. So notice on this side and on that side. Now what I'm going to do is draw a diagonal panel. I want to make sure that the sizes are the same to the other sides. So you can measure it this way. So it's like about right there where it says USA on it. And so I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. So we want it diagonal. And so I'm going to measure it. Actually the opposite way. There we go. Yep, it's about there at the end of the USA. Yep. So they're about the same size, okay? The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing. We're going to draw a straight line, but we're going to sketch it down slowly, okay? I know you want to do this really fast and jump into painting, but remember, take your time. There is no rush. Okay, so now I'm going to draw a straight line downward. See how slowly I'm going? There we go. Keep going. Keep going. All right, and now what I'm going to do is connect the bottom. Voila, I have my first panel. We're going to do the same thing to the opposite side. Take your time. Let me move this because I need some room. Okay, now let's go down. Sketch it downwards. Go slowly. And then connect. Voila. Guess what? We're going to do the windows. You can add 2 big long ones or 3. So today, I'm going to do 3. You decide. But before you do that, let's erase. I'm going to find my clean spot right here. Actually, this is my cleanest spot. And I'm going to erase the line that's there. We don't need that anymore. We don't need that cue. Now see how there's a little bit on it? That's fine, we're gonna paint over it, so it's not a big deal. Okay, so now I wanna create my first little window panel, right? So I want, you know, just figure out what the width of it. So you wanna not draw a line straight all the way across. What you wanna do is give a little space in between, okay? You're gonna do the same thing to the other side. So let's see, it's about, the space between is about the same size of where the pencil, the white area of the pencil and the tip of the pencil. So I'm gonna make sure that that's the same, put my finger here so that way I have a little cue there to show me where I can start, okay? So I did my first line across. Now I'm gonna bring it down. All right, now I'm gonna do the same thing to the other side. So I like to do the same thing, bring it down, kind of measure where it's at, do a little point and drag my sketch down. See how I did that? You don't need a ruler, but if you're comfortable with using a ruler instead, go ahead. Remember, it's all about practice, right? I can do this because I like to draw often, so I have enough practice to know what I am able to do or what I'm not comfortable doing. So now that we have 2 panels, I'm gonna add 2 more to the opposite side, and then we're gonna add 2 more again. So this is the same process. So I'm gonna measure the space. I'm gonna put my finger right there. I'm gonna add a line just to make it easy. Put my finger, measure, beautiful. All right, so I'm gonna draw my line. So you can use your pencil to measure, right? So it ends right here. So I'm gonna go right here and add a little line. Normally I don't do that, but I think it's important to give you guys little tips that you can use to measure if you don't have a ruler. Sometimes you can use what you have. So I'm gonna do the same thing right around there. Make sure it measures nice. Yep. Beautiful. So I have 4. Now we're gonna add 2 more and then we're gonna get started with the fun part. Well, this is fun for me because I like sketching. Okay, so I'm gonna make sure that the measurement is good. I'm gonna start there. All right. And take your time. Grab my eraser because I did it a little too long. All right. All right, we are done with our window. So now what we're gonna do is add 2 more lines, okay? So now I'm going to add the floor. So where do I want my floor to begin? So I'm gonna start right here because we're gonna add some plants in this area. And then where does our window end, right? So our window kind of starts right here. So what we're gonna do is we're going to, so remember our warm up? This is what we're warming up. That was the warm up for us so we can be ready for our sketch. And this is gonna be the outlook of our beach view, okay? So right here, you can add some lines for your stairs. We'll define it later. And now we can put our sketch pencil away and get started with the fun part, painting. All right, so grab your angular brush, 3/4. Everybody ready? So what you're gonna do, we're gonna mix colors. So remember Henry Matisse? He loved using vibrant colors. and he loved to express his emotions with color. So kids, if you want to use a different color than I am, go ahead. Use the color that you feel. Just use me as a tool, as a guidance as to how to do it. But say if you want to paint your walls blue, do it. I'm going to paint my walls magenta and yellow. It's going to create a fabulous color. But if you have a different idea and you're feeling, oh, I'm feeling green, paint it green, okay? Explore. Don't limit yourself, okay? You don't have to follow rules. Kind of create your own thing too. So let's get started. I'm going to dip my paintbrush onto my water bottle. Make sure that it's nice and wet. And if you remember, when we did the summer sea turtle, I actually added water before adding paint. So we're gonna do the same thing. We are going to add water. See how I'm pressing down, making sure that water is all around. Don't add too much because we don't want our paper to get too bubbly. It'll get a little bubbly, but that's fine. And then just paint across, because we're gonna go crazy here. Just go crazy with colors. All right. Now remember what I said. Go ahead and explore what colors you're feeling. So here we go. All right, now that my, not entire, but just the areas that where it's not, where the window is not at, I'm not making sense, that's okay. Just paint around the door and around the door panels. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to get some yellow, and let's start. Oh, look at that beautiful color. I don't know about you, but I get excited when I add paint to, when I first add my first layer of paint onto my art piece. You know, it's like this excitement of starting a new beginning, right? Because every time you create something, it's something new. Because you never know what it's going to turn out. And then you get just so excited when it turns out amazing. Now, I've had some art pieces where I'm like, I don't know if this is going to look good. You know what? Every time I do that, it ends up turning out really great because I play with it. I explore. I always tell all of my students, no such thing as bad art. No. All right, so see how I'm going with yellow? Look at that. It's just so bright and cheery. And that's how I feel, bright and cheery. I get to paint with you guys. How fun is that? I think people would be so happy if they painted every day. How do you feel when you paint? Let's tap into that, right? How do I feel when I paint? Well, let me tell you how I feel. I feel happy. I feel calm. I feel like everything is so great in the world. And then I feel also beautiful, because being an artist and doing something you love makes you feel beautiful, right? Okay, so now that I've added my bright yellow, I'm gonna go ahead and dip my brush just at the tip, and we're gonna add some magenta and see what happens. What color do you think is going to show up? Let's find out. This is part of blending and having fun. So I'm gonna dip a little bit, just the tip, and look at the nice streaks. Look at how pretty that looks. It kind of reminds me of those big stick popsicles. Have you guys ever had those? Those are, when I was growing up, they were my favorite, but it kind of reminds me of that color. The blending of the swirl, a little bit of orange, because it's starting to turn a little orangey, right? So go ahead, add some more, go across. Beautiful. And you can go ahead and start blending your colors. You could dip into magenta and yellow and mix it together. You can do it on your art piece, or when you dip your brush onto the paints. Go ahead, have fun. So there's a little hair. Just lift it off with your paintbrush and just move on. Keep going, don't stop. Now don't forget the inside here, the inside of the windows. You could just dab it a little bit, and we'll add it. So you see how it's a little bit orangey here and it gets lighter and lighter? That's normal. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is add texture. So notice how I am adding more texture and the colors are changing. Then I'm gonna add linear. Beautiful. Now I'm gonna add a little more water. So you see how my color is starting to evolve? I'm mixing my yellow with a little bit of magenta, and I'm gonna mix it together and just keep going. Beautiful. There we go. Now, if you want to add another splash of another color, go right ahead. So what I'm trying to do is just blend the colors together. And then what I'm going to do for this little one, I'm going to add some textures to it. So notice that instead of flattening my brush, I moved it to the narrow space, and I'm just kind of moving my brush up and down and in fast motion, right? So it gives it another different texture. Switching hands, explore. It's really good to get your other hand moving. Sometimes you get some really interesting textures when you switch your hands. My left hand is not my strong hand, but it does something. See that? Have fun. Switch it around. Sometimes it wakes up the other side of your brain. All right. Here we go. Now I want to add a little more yellow, but before I do that, I need to get the ends right here. So I'm going to go ahead, draw a line here. There we go. Beautiful. Now, if you notice, I'm not adding a lot of water, right? It's important not to add too much because then, you won't be able to do a lot. Okay, so I'm almost ready here. I'm going to go ahead, grab some yellow because I really want some like streaks. See how I'm doing that? Now it's adding a different texture. This one needs a little bit more pink. Whoops, got a little nuts, but that's okay. Kind of gives it like a washed look, right? So I'm flipping it to the side, to the narrow part, adding colors. Now it doesn't matter if this part isn't perfect because we're going to add some greenery to that. That'll be fun to do. Okay, I think I'm pretty happy with the way it looks. So I'm going to end the walls and I'm going to put my brush, mix it in. Ooh, look at how my watercolor changes to like a light orange, very, very light. I'll go ahead, dry it out, place it to the side. I might use it, I might not, who knows. All right, now we're gonna move on to the panels. Oh no, I forgot something. Actually, this works out fine. So now what we're gonna do is grab our little wash brush, our glaze, 5/8. We're gonna dip it a little bit. This is like perfect for the inside of our little windows, right? We gotta match it with the other side. So I'm gonna go ahead, add some pink here, and add some yellow, a little more yellow. And then I'm gonna dip into the water. And then tap it away a little bit, because I don't want too much. Get some water. All right, see how I did that? Beautiful. Now we're doing that because the panels are open and they're facing against the wall. So it has to kind of match the color. Now it doesn't match perfectly because they're glass windows, right? So we're gonna leave it like that. We're gonna go ahead, rinse our brush. Now dry it. We're gonna use it later, so I'm gonna bring it back here. Now I'm gonna go ahead and grab my round brush number 10. And I'm gonna dip it just the tip. And now we're going to dip our paintbrush into our aquamarine. And this is the color that I'm choosing for my door panels. Now, if you have something else in mind, go ahead. Just make sure that it's a color that contrasts the yellow and the pink. So blue would be a good contrast. Green would be a great contrast, but we're gonna use greenery, so we might kind of stay away from that. Gray would be a great one too. Or if you just wanna do pink, that would be great. Or just yellow, that would be a better option than combining both colors, or better than red. So here I go. I'm drawing my nice line. And right now I'm just focusing on the outline. I'm gonna add some paint, some water, and this is where you can go slowly. Take your time. Kind of like with the sketching, same thing. There's my outline for one side of it. Perfect. Now what I'm going to do, dip my whole brush, and guess what? I'm going to use these colors to pull it down. I got a little too much water, so I'm just going to nick it down and then blend in the colors. See that? Nothing to it. You really don't have to add water. You just add it to your paintbrush and then you pull down the colors. See how I did that? I'm using the colors that I outlined and just pulling it away from it and adding it to the white empty spaces, the negative parts. So now that I'm running out of water, I'm going to dip it and make sure it's not too much, because I don't want it to get, I don't want my art piece to be overloaded too much with water. So see how I'm blending the colors? Now it looks like here at the end that my paint dried a little. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a little bit of, just a tiny bit, and then just add it. See how nicely it shows? We're going to layer it, okay? The thing about watercolor is that you layer colors. So sometimes it's a little bit lighter, but as you layer it, it gets darker. I love watercolor painting. It's actually one of my favorites. All right, so now that I'm okay with this for right now, we're gonna let this part dry. We're gonna switch on to the opposite side and do the same thing. All right, I'm gonna get the tip and we're gonna do, paint the outline and just sketch it down. So you're probably asking yourself, why is my paper bubbly? That happens every time you do watercolor painting, and that's okay. When we are done with the project, what I do to flatten out my art pieces is I get a heavy book that's the same size, and then once my art piece is completely dry, I put heavy books on it, and it flattens it really nicely. So don't worry. So now that I've outlined it, I'm going to go ahead, dip my brush, and bring down the colors. And start blending it in. This is why I love watercolors. It's so soothing. All right. And we're gonna add little details too. All right, see how I pull the colors using the colors from the paint from the side? That's all you gotta do. Now, if you find your brush starting to dry up like mine is right now, I'm going to dip my paintbrush and get it a little wet and start pulling the colors in. Now, if it looks like my colors are drying, all you gotta do is just get a tiny bit, see? And spread the colors. Now, aquamarine is actually my all-time favorite color. It really is. I love it because it reminds me of a mermaid. And it just reminds me of the ocean. And the ocean is so calming. And who doesn't like going to the beach? Very few people feel that. Very few people don't like going to the beach. All right. So now that I completed my door panels, I'm going to go ahead and add another layer. I want my aquamarine to be a little bit darker. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, paint over. So I'm going to spread some colors all around. I'm going to do a little dab here. Now I'm going to dip my paintbrush and I'm going to spread the colors around. So you see how darker it's getting? Beautiful, that's what I'm looking for. Now if you're choosing another color, you do the same process, okay? Beautiful. I didn't add a little bit of that, so I'm going to add it here. My paintbrush is starting to dry up, so I'm dipping my brush again, and I'm pulling down the color. Sharing the colors around. And as you can see, it's starting to get darker. And that's what I want. And the darker it gets, the more our lines start disappearing, our sketch lines, which is the goal. That's what we want. Now I'm pulling it down flatly, but notice how I'm just going down slowly. Beautiful. Now what we're going to do the same thing to the other side because as you can see, it's already drying out, which is perfect. So we're going to dip our paintbrush. We're going to add a little dark here, a little paint there, a little paint here, paint there, add some to the side. Easy peasy. Now dip your brush, not too wet, but just enough to spread the colors evenly. Beautiful. I just came up with that word. Actually, I came up with that word a while back. It's just fun. Do you guys create your own words? I do. I have friends who come up with their own words, and it's so funny. All right, so keep on going. Now I need a little bit more water on my brush. I'm going to dip. There we go. Beautiful. I love it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to give our doors a little break. Go ahead, rinse your paintbrush. Oh, before we do that, I wanted to do one more thing. Sorry about that. So we're going to do exactly what we did to the other side, and I'm going to slowly pull it down so it smooths it out. All right, now we're good. Now we're probably going to use a brush, so I'm going to put it back here. And now we're going to start inside. So what I want to do is grab our round number 6 brush. We're going to dip our brush and add some water to an empty spot in our palette. I'm going to grab just a little yellow and mix it. Just a tiny bit. Now I'm gonna wash my brush because I only need a little yellow. I don't want it to come out too much, right? So now what I'm gonna do is just dip this and paint the bottom. I want it very clear. I just want a very light color. A slight hint of color, not a lot. I don't want to add a lot because we're gonna be adding some plant life and I want that to stand out. So this is gonna be a very neutral, muted color. Perfect, that's all I need. Beautiful. So you could see the contrast, but it's still very light. That's what we're looking for. And then we're gonna do the same thing to this side. We're gonna get our paintbrush and we're gonna do the same thing, very, very light. And we're gonna spread the water with a little bit of pigment. There we go. Beautiful. That's all we're gonna do for this part for right now. Now, let's get started with our beach view. So what I'm gonna do is grab some yellow, do the same thing. I'm probably gonna add a little gray, but I'm just gonna draw a little line, like a diagonal line, looks like a long triangle. So start from here, go up, and that's it. Now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna add a little water all around. And I'm making sure that I'm not touching either side because I don't want the aquamarine to come to my beach scene. All right, so now that I've added water all around, I'm gonna go ahead and dip my paintbrush, just the tip. And I'm gonna find where I want my beach to start and end. So the beach is gonna, end here, and it's gonna start right here. See that? Now what we're gonna do is just pull down the colors because our paper is wet, so it's easier to pull down the blue. See that? See how I pull it down? Now I'm gonna add, kind of twist and turn and get a little pointy here and add little dabs. So you want to add dabs to the end. Now I'm going to add a tiny bit of aquamarine and a tiny bit of blue and blend those colors in. Remember? It'll give me more like a beach look, and I want it to be a little bit darker. So you could dab, you can paint it this way, add texture. Beautiful. Doesn't that look amazing? And you're probably thinking, wow, that's how you do it? Yep, not that hard, right? This is a great tool for you to learn for watercolors. See? The great thing about watercolors is that you can just add different shades. And now I'm like, if you notice, I'm just kind of tapping it, right? I'm pressing down and tapping because I really want it to give it like that ocean, when the waves come crashing into the shore. So now I just want to darken the top. I'm going to get a little bit of aquamarine, just a tiny bit, and just a tiny bit of blue. There we go. All right, so I think I am happy with my ocean. Now what we're gonna do is, it's starting to dry up a little bit, so I'm gonna go ahead and dip a little bit and get it wet. Not too wet, just enough. All right, because I want to give it like a romantic look. So I'm gonna go ahead. Now I'm going to use the same brush. So we'll keep our brush. We're going to dip it onto the gray, just a little, and I'm gonna create my mountain, okay? So if you could draw it the way you want. Think about how you sketched it on your warm-up book and try to do the same thing. But if you think of something else better, do it. Okay, so I'm gonna start here. Mountain's gonna start here, and I'm gonna make it go up, and then I'm gonna let it go slope up a little bit. So I'm gonna get a little bit more gray, just a tiny bit, and then I'm gonna put the colors down. Exactly what we did with the ocean, you're gonna do the same thing. You're just pulling down the colors. All right, I'm gonna add a little gray. Perfect. Now I want my mountains a little darker, so I'm gonna add a little bit more paint, not too much. See that? You don't need a lot. And if you notice, I'm not adding gray, like the dark gray everywhere, because I'm actually gonna blend in different colors. Have fun with it. Here we go. Beautiful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a little pink. Yeah, that's right. Pink and a little bit of dark blue. Kind of mix it right here on the side. Get a little more pink because I'm looking for purple. You add magenta and blue. And guess what? You get purple. Look at that. All right, here we go. Kind of gives it a different hue. So now I'm going to press here so that way it kind of blends in with the horizon of the end of the beach and the start of my mountains. And then I'm going to tip it over. See this little area? I'm tapping it very at the end. I'm using the point very lightly, tapping it in. Be careful. Take your time. Beautiful. Now I'm going to add a little bit of gray. Perfect. I am very happy with my beautiful mountain. Can you imagine waking up and this being your view? Oh, that's amazing. Okay, we're gonna rinse our brush. We're gonna go back to it a little later. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab our filbert brush and we're gonna add the sun, okay? So we're gonna wet it a little bit. Make sure that it's kind of wet here. Now, dip your paint. You need about this much. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of make my sun right here. All right. So there is my sun behind the peak of this little mountain. So you could center your sun. If you don't want your sun in the middle, you can put it to the side. It's your painting. Remember that. All right. Now we have... or even like, this would be great. Great. All right, so now I'm happy with my sun. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add streaks. A little bit of yellow streaks. Okay, this could be a sunset or a sunrise, whatever you want. So now that I have my streaks, I'm gonna go ahead and grab some of my pink. And I'm gonna add a little pink streaks. And just pull the colors to the side. Now, it needs a little water on the sides. Now I'm going to add a little purple that I made here. Kind of gives it a cool look, right? Pulling the colors. Now I'm going to add a tiny bit of a little yellow here because the sun has yellow tones when it rises and when it sets. See how I did that? Beautiful. Okay, so now I'm going to add a little bit of aquamarine, tiny little bit of blue, and I'm going to mix it here on the side. Now I don't want too much, so I'm going to rinse. Actually, we'll leave the paintbrush here for right now. We're going to grab our Number 1, linear pencil or paintbrush. Okay, and I'm gonna dip a little bit of the blue and I'm gonna add cool streaks. Wow, what a difference it makes, right? You can just add lines. And it gives it a nice color. And I'm gonna go ahead and add some pink. See what that does? Pretty awesome. This is why I love using a really good linear paintbrush, because you can get little details and you could just kind of play with the colors. Now we're going to add a little yellow. I'm going to add some lines there. Beautiful, kids. This is turning out really beautiful. Now I'm going to go ahead and just flatten it out and let the colors blend in. And I'm pretty happy with the way it looks. So now what I'm going to do is get my little filbert brush, rinse it off, and add the final touch to my beach view. I'm rubbing the paint off because it doesn't want to come off, and then slightly dab it, and then just kind of blend the colors, flatten it out. Lovely. Okay, I'm happy with it. Rinse, dry, because we're going to use it again. So now that we're done with our beach scene, we're going to go over one more time and paint over with aquamarine, but this time we're going to use our round number 6 brush. So it's still a little wet. We can dip it a little. Okay, this is the last time we're going to paint and add aquamarine to our doors. So we're going to do the same thing that we did last time. We're going to paint the tips, add some paint, just a little to each side. And I want to make sure I get all sides, and I'm adding a little bit more paint because I do want it darker. All right, so just lightly add some water to the tip of your brush and pull down the color. All right. So we've had to add 3 layers of aquamarine to get the right shade that we're looking for. Here we go. See how I'm pulling it down much more, and I'm going a little faster because we really don't need to take our time. We already have our visual cue. All right. So you can see how a little bit darker it is on this side. So now let's go to the opposite side and do the same thing. We're going to add little dots of aquamarine on all sides. I'm going to wet the tip and do the same thing. Pull the colors. Beautiful. I am loving the way my doors look. Perfect. All right, we are completely done with our doors. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna add greenery. Now we are going to use our number 10 brush, and we're gonna dip just the tip. And then we're going to lightly dab. So when you dab, you just add green. And then we're going to add like a big bushel of green. And it's going to add, we're going to dab all the way around the window. I am done with that one. Now I'm going to start here. And yes, it's a little wet right here, but that's quite all right because we're going to add details to it. We're going to add some really cool details around it. Beautiful. Guys, get the idea of what I'm trying to do here? All right, so once we're done dabbing, we're gonna add more dabbing, but with a different paintbrush, okay? So I'm done, and I'm gonna get something a little bit smaller. And I'm done with that one, so I'm going to dry out this one too. And I'm gonna grab my linear, number 1, and I'm gonna add more details, and I'm gonna go ahead and grab some green. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna add some shrubbery falling down onto the wall. But because I want it to be more detailed, I'm just using the tip. So I'm holding it up and I'm dabbing or tapping. And if you notice, I'm adding more color, more texture. I'm okay with that. So I'm just tapping, tapping, tapping. Now the top is drying out, so I'm adding more green because I really want it to stand out. And add movement texture to it. Okay, now that I have enough greenery, go ahead and rinse. We're gonna use the same brush. We're gonna wash it out. Sometimes you have to press it against the cup or glass to get the paint out. So we really wanna do that because it makes it easier to clean. All right, it's pretty clean. Now I'm going to fold over my towel and dry it off. Now we're gonna dip it into red. So we're gonna just slightly add red to the tip. And we're gonna add little flowers. Isn't that beautiful? Dot, dot. They look like little cherries, but these are little flowers. So I'm adding red and I'm gonna add yellow too, just to bring it out. And add it all around. There we go. All right, so now add red. Now I'm gonna wash it off. And add yellow. I need a little more. There we go. For the yellow to stand out, you're going to need to grab a glob of it. There we go. Let's add some yellow around both sides. There we go. Great, we are done with our little shrubbery around our window. We're gonna go ahead and rinse it, clean it off, and now we have 2 more things to do. We have to add our little plants here, and then we're gonna add our little steps, and we then have completed our art project. So now what I wanna do is I'm going to mix my blue here and aquamarine, just mix the colors, make a different shade of blue, because I'm going to paint out a pot. So we really want to make sure that it's kind of in the middle. So I have my line here, right, that separates it. So, oh, actually, sorry about that, kids. Before I do that, we're gonna have to wash this off real quick and clean it off. Actually, not too bad. All right, so I'm gonna get a little gray, just a little bit, and we're gonna add some gray to our line here. Perfect. And right here too. It's like a gray blue, so it looks pretty. All right, nice. Now I'm gonna go back, dry it off, and actually get the shade of blue that I want that I mixed here. All right, so now I'm gonna create a pot. Making a smile, and then I'm making 2 lines to the other side. And I'm not making a straight line, just kind of curved little pot right here. And then I'm going and I'm pulling down the colors. And I want to make sure that I add a little more paint so it covers the line. So I'm going to make another little line right here. All right, I'm going to rinse my brush, dry it up, and get a little green and create some plants. So I'm going to fleck upwards. I'm doing upwards and downwards. So we have this little guy. Who likes plants in their room? I do. I have plants in my room, I have plants outside, I have plants in the living room. I even have names for them. So now we're done with our first pot. Now you don't have to make it blue if you don't want to. You can make your own color. So I'm going to do a second pot. It's going to be red. And I am going to kind of make it like a V. And then paint. Perfect. I'm going to add a little bit more red. Make a nice little straight line. Rinse my brush. Now I'm going to get some more green. And I'm doing swirls. There we go. And I'm going to add one more pot. And the color I want to use is, let's go for pink. So I'll make a round one. And you can decide whatever shape you want. It doesn't have to be like mine. If you just want 2 pots of plants, that's fine. If you want 3, go for it. If you just want 2, that's fine too. It's all up to you. Now I kind of want to add some green and some yellow, kind of change the color. Green and yellow makes it, green and yellow makes green yellow. It just makes the green brighter and it gives it a different shade, and you'll see what I mean. So see, my green is a little bit brighter. So I'm going to go do circular, but I'm also going to add little flowers to it. Okay. I want to add some purple. So remember what colors make purple? We got blue and we got magenta, and I'm going to blend in the colors together to make purple. All right, I got my purple blue. Let's add a little bit more pink. Beautiful. All right, I'm just going to add a little dot. And that's it. Now, before I do that, before we finish our art piece, we still have our stairs, but there's a tiny thing that I want to add to my art piece. I got a little bit gray, I'm going to outline the bottom and add little legs. 1, 2, 3. Now you don't have to do this for yours, but I want to. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to leave this one flat without any legs. All right, so now we are done with like our beach scene, our beach view. Now all we have to do is add the stairs. So remember I said that, oh, we're gonna bring back, actually no, we're going to use our number 10 round brush. We're gonna dip it in. We're gonna do the final part, which is the stairs. Now you can't see the lines, but you see some of the lines here, right? So let's add our first, let's start from right here. Add a line right there, and a line right there. And we're really not gonna make it too big. We're not gonna focus too much on it. We're just gonna just add some lines right here. Dip our brush, because I just want it to have like a blurry look to it. And you can add a little yellow, a little pink. We're gonna add pink to it. And then just, there you go. And a little yellow and pink. And water. There we go. Just to contrast it a little. Nice, blurry, blended, soft look. All right, kids. We did it. Oh, almost. I almost forgot the most important part. Actually, it's not the most important part, but it's important. The last thing we're gonna do, get your number 1 linear pencil, get some blue, and we're going to add the last detail. I promise you it's the last. All right, and we're gonna, there we go. Just to make it stand out more, but we're gonna outline. Dip your brush and then blend it down. There we go. See what I'm doing? Yes. Okay. And what we're doing to one side, we're gonna do to the other. So grab some blue from this side and add it. There we go. I'm gonna add a little blue again, just a tiny bit. See how I did that? Just a tiny bit. That's it. And you're gonna do the same thing to the other side. And then we have completed, ooh, I didn't want too much. Just wanted just enough. I'm gonna slide down. My paintbrush is drying. Add a little blue just to the tip. There we go. Make sure our paintbrush is nice and wet so we can add the blue on all sides nicely. All right. Let me refine this. There we go. We are done with our art project. You guys did a great job. Now I'm going to take off the painter's tape so you can see the final work. Well, you already seeing your final art piece and how it looks, so I can't wait to see your art pieces, kiddos. All right. Nice and all All right, kids, I hope that you're proud of your beach scene.
Life is beautiful, so hold your head up high. Sometimes we get a second chance. I know I got mine, and I'm gonna make it better this time around.
All right, kids, now that we've completed our art project, I can't wait to see your masterpiece. So feel free to share it on our social media, on Facebook or Instagram, and tag us at Art Time with Flory. But wait, don't forget to ask your parents' permission. All right, so our next class, we are going to be learning about the artist, Mary Cassatt. We're also gonna learn a little history of colors, and our project is called Big Wave. All right, kids, I'm excited for our next class, and I can't wait to see you. So go ahead and make every day an art day, and love you guys. Bye.